Hello everyone, I'm Juanita. Welcome to Scientific Python Interviews. Today we have Marianne Corvellec. She's the core developer of scikit-image, a well-established Python library for image processing. She's also an independent researcher affiliated with IDOR, the Institute for Globally Distributed Open Research and Education. Her technical interests include data science workflows, data visualization, and best practices for testing to documenting. Hey Marianne, can you please introduce yourself?
Hi, Juanita. Thank you for having me. You introduced myself already a little bit, but I can say a bit more about my background. I studied physics in France and Canada. Actually, I started my higher education in earth sciences. I took a lot of math as well. Actually, I wanted to be a climatologist back when I was 17. So I knew I would need some computing in my curriculum. So I was always quite multidisciplinary, let's say. I ended up doing a PhD in statistical physics, which I defended a decade ago in 2012 at École Normale Supérieure de Lyon in France.
Wow, physics. Nice. Very interesting. Okay, so what drove you to contribute to open source and what was your first open source contribution?
So the anecdote I have shared in detail in the past at the 2016 World Social Forum in Montreal, but I will sum it up for you guys today. Basically, as a PhD student in physics, I was using a cracked version of MATLAB. And one day it stopped working. I couldn't launch the program anymore. So I looked for an alternative out of necessity. I needed to make these figures for my PhD dissertation. So I needed a scientific plotting tool. And I found matplotlib, which led me to the SciPy ecosystem more generally. And from the get-go, I was very impressed and very excited with the idea that maybe one day I myself could contribute something that I could give back, And then it was a very gradual process because for a long time I contributed really tiny edits, maybe even fixing typos in the set of instructions, And to be honest, I don't remember exactly what my first contribution was, but it was probably something like this, maybe rewording or improving the set of instructions for scikit-image or maybe another package.
Nice. So now you're a maintainer, right? So how did you become a maintainer and what was the greatest challenge of it?
I'm not sure I remember exactly how I became a maintainer or core developer of scikit-image. I was around, let's say, in the SciPy community. I know it happened on October the 15th of 2020 because I still have the letter of invitation in my inbox. It was written very nicely, by the way, by Juan for the entire core team. And well, it didn't come as a surprise, that was the plan. Emma, a year or so ahead, had told me that, the plan was for me to become a core developer. And then, in 2020, at that point anyway, my work was supported by a grant. But prior to this, I think, people would know my name, my face, because I would show up at, the SciPy conferences, I would teach, I would volunteer, and I don't think I ever made, major contributions, to the code base per se, but I was always, reviewing, helping, maybe fixing something. Then I had this opportunity to dive deeper in the package, in the project, and I seized the opportunity.
A letter of invitation? That sounds great. I've never heard this story before, actually.
It went straight to my heart because, you could tell it was heartfelt, and it was about, recognizing what I had accomplished, and that also including me in the core team would also help me go further, and also encourage me, because, sometimes, triaging open issues and going through all the pull requests, it's not always fun, but you want to do it to make the sci-fi ecosystem a better place. I think that's one of your next questions. So sorry, I'm anticipating a bit. But some of it is fun because you get to work on, what you like, what you find interesting. But sometimes you also have to be like, okay, I'll just roll up my sleeves, and there are all these like friendly contributors who are waiting for a review, and they're not getting it. So I'll try to help with that.
Yeah, that's a very nice way to get involved in the project. So I'm wondering, how is your work in open source scientific Python different from your research job at IDOR?
Sure. So I could give you the general speech, but maybe it's trivial. Working in scientific Python is more technical, obviously, and working in independent research is more conceptual. So if you consider reproducible research, for example, the researcher needs to reflect on what it needs exactly for their research results to be reproducible, whereas the scientific software developer will be more interested in the tools that make it possible. And of course, one side benefits from what the other side advances. But to be more personal, maybe well, first of all, my independent research is broader than scientific Python because it's not always scientific and it's not always Python. Last year, so you'll see how remote this is, I translated a book in the field of contemporary political philosophy, and maybe it doesn't even qualify as research. Formally speaking, it would fall in the category of literary translation. But the way I translate is researchy anyway, so I consider it my work anyway. And maybe less remotely, back in 2018, I co-authored a paper with other people from the Carpentries. And the Carpentries, for those of you who don't know, is a great organization dedicated to teaching, data skills and coding skills to researchers. And typically they organize workshops at universities or other institutions. And of course, scientific Python often comes into play when teaching these skills, but the actual study in the paper was not about scientific Python, right? It was about assessing the impact that these workshops have on the learners. So yeah, that's an example I can give.
It does sound different, and it also sounds very fun. Like, I am very into teaching, and I would love to get involved into these like workshop learning experiences for developers too. Okay, so what other ways have you been involved with the scientific Python community?
So I searched in my memory a bit. I think I attended my first scientific Python conference back in 2011 in Europe. Then I was a co-speaker twice at SciPy 2013 and SciPy 2018 in Austin, Texas. Then I mentioned the Carpentries in my previous answer. I was also an instructor at ASPP in 2015 and 17. ASPP being a great summer school aimed at scientists. And ASPP stands for Advanced Scientific Programming in Python. So that's the kind of, I've taught many workshops here and there, but those would be the highlights, I should say.
Okay, thank you. So now the question you were talking about, which I feel like it's the hardest for everyone. What do you think you're doing to make the scientific Python community better?
Yeah, that's a hard one. So yeah, I mentioned my role as a pull request reviewer, where I try to be helpful. I try to make especially new contributors feel very welcome. Then personally, I try to write really well. I write for the reader, for the user, for the student who might stumble across scikit-image. And maybe because I have this focus, de facto, I have specialized in narrative documentation. And by narrative documentation, we mean materials which are tutorial-like in long format, and that showcase the analysis workflows that you can achieve with scikit-image. This, I can tie this back maybe with the hierarchy you mentioned in my intro, from testing to documenting. Well, narrative documentation would be the highest level of this hierarchy, and below you would have tests. Various kinds of tests, doc strings, doc tests, so tests in the doc string. And I don't know, maybe the lowest level in this case would be a self-documenting function signature. So having all this in mind, trying to make the code very readable and hence very maintainable. Of course, that's a way to make, hopefully, to make the scientific Python community a better place.
Yeah, of course. Documentation is a great part of scientific Python. Like, I am fond of documentation. I actually worked in documentation for a long time. And I feel like it does make a difference, because if you have the tools, but you don't teach how to use them, then it's like not the same, right? So
it's only for yourself, and you cannot really reach out to a broader user base. And and even for your future self anyway, the maintainability issue still comes into play.
Yeah, totally. So yeah, you are making the scientific Python community better. Thank you for it. Okay, so last question is, can you give some advice to someone that wants to contribute to the scientific Python ecosystem?
So actually, that's a harder question, even harder question for me, because I feel I would need to meet the person who is interested, and then I would be happy to have a chat, and then I would tailor my answer to them. Giving general advice, I'm not sure. I'm not sure I can say something relevant. Something else came to my mind, so I hope I will not lose all my friends after I say this, at least all my friends in the community. But I know that if I were a newcomer today in the scientific Python community, I would be put off by all the DEI ideology, diversity, equity, and inclusion. So for those newcomers, potential newcomers who feel the same way, I should tell them to try and ignore this ideology and try and focus on the code, on the science, and on the collaboration, because I think it has gone too far personally.
Wow. Yeah, I think that's a strong perspective. But I guess one of the things that makes the ecosystem great is that people are actually friendly. So like you say, like, I don't really know what to say as a general advice, but like I would sit down to chat with someone, like to actually give them a specific advice. Okay, thank you for that. I really appreciate you taking the time of doing this. And do you have anything else to say, or just wrap it up here?
No, thank you so much, Juanita, for having me. It was very nice chatting with you, and I hope we get to talk again maybe about teaching. If you want to get involved with the carpentries, I would definitely encourage you and support you. So
yeah, thank you so much, and welcome to the scientific Python community.
Thank you so much. Bye.